I love driving around in the mountains. As I'm driving around the mountains, I got my Jeep, I take the top off. If I can get the doors off, I do that too. And I download the music, download the maps, because you get no cell phone reception out there. And I like to get a little lost because I know that my car can handle it. And as I'm going, it's inevitable. Every single time I'm surprised by this, I'll like bump into my dashboard, like my hand will touch something, and all of a sudden I'll see how much dust just accumulated on my dashboard, and it's dirty on my finger. I'm like, what in the world? And then, of course, I get home and I look in the mirror and I have my glasses on. I take the glasses off and it's like caked in my eyebrows, in my beard. It's everywhere because that's what happens when you're driving out in the mountains, especially in Arizona. There's an ancient saying that was old when Jesus was around, so we're talking like it predates Jesus by a long shot. And the saying goes like this: may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. Which simply means, may you be somebody who is so close with your teacher, your mentor, the person you spend the time with, that you see how they talk to their husband or how they talk to their wife. You see how they navigate disappointment in life, what they do when their kids fly off the handle. You see them in situations where they're winning big, in times that maybe for most of us, we don't want other people to see. And you see how they respond and you learn from them. And kind of baked into that is this idea that you don't learn from your teacher, from your mentor. The best way, at least, isn't just by taking notes. There's always a time and a place where you hear somebody say something, you write that down. The best way of learning from somebody is by spending time with them. It's proximity. So may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi means you're walking in ancient Israel, and the dust that kicks up from their sandals covers you, so that now you are someone who is covered by your rabbi. And we get this. We get that that's how we learn. And we know this because you're gonna have to humor me on this. Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. There we go. Good job. Good job. I mean, not really, but I'll give it to you now. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Good job. Sweet Caroline. That isn't even in the song, all right? Have you noticed that? I went back and listened to it. I'm like, it's nowhere. It's not even hidden in the background somewhere. Like it's just a few decades ago, we decided to do that. And then we added so good, so good, so good, as if it's always been there, which is a little confusing and unsettling. But here's what I know about you. Nobody gave you the sheet of lyrics to Queen or Neil Diamond and said, hey, you're gonna need this when you go to church on February 15th, 2026. You better study up, right? Like you just picked up these things to the point to where it just becomes who you are. And even when it's not really the lyrics, it's because what everybody else does when that song is saying, that you do that thing that we pick this up from each other. It's because you hear it, because you've been immersed in it. And that's really what culture is at the end of the day. It trains us, it teaches us. This is how we learn. In a very real sense, you become the things that you love. You become like the people you spend your time with. So, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. Our kids need fathers and mothers who are covered in the dust of their rabbi Jesus. Our neighbors, our friends, our family needs people in their life that exude and are covered by the love of Jesus. Because this is the way that we make our way forward. And that kind of begs the question, whose dust are you covered in? And if we're being honest, the nice churchy answer is, well, Jesus, obviously. But for a lot of us, I think, if we're all being honest, there's none of us that would say, well, it's only Jesus. There's somebody else in there. Maybe it's a talking head somewhere. I don't know. Whose dust are you covered in? This is why, first and foremost, when Jesus gets up to preach one of his biggest sermons of all time, the Sermon on the Mount, he starts it off in the particular way by describing what it's like to be in the kingdom. Here's what he says. He says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, blessed are the people who aren't even pretending anymore. Like, they're not trying to be something that they're not. They are just themselves, and they're humble about it. And in that way, they're going to be in a posture that is a lot easier to understand who Jesus is and what Jesus is about, because they're poor in spirit. Or blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the people who go out and instead of, just living their life and live and let be kind of a thing. No. I am going to bring goodness and mercy into the world that I live in. I am responsible to make peace here, to bring in some of this stuff. So Jesus, when he says this, he's not saying, hey, here's a lot of stuff to do. You need to try harder. Rather, he's being descriptive here about what it looks like to be a dust-covered person. Somebody who's covered in Jesus' dust. It's somebody who is humble. It's somebody who makes peace and brings it into divisive places. And that's hard for me, not just in an individual way. The individual stuff is actually where I would like it to be, because I like it when my relationship with God is just between me and God. It's not between me and anybody else. But you can't walk in the way of Jesus and have that be the case. Jesus says it's the love of God and the love of others. The way you love God is by loving others well. Oof. It's a lot easier if I could just say, I love God and everybody else is dumb. No responsibility. But that's not what Jesus says. Life is cleaner in that way, maybe easier in that way, but that's not what the Christian life is meant to be. So Paul, he goes in the New Testament, he writes this letter to a church, and here's how he starts this section of the letter in Colossians chapter 3. He says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved. First thing you got to notice about this, as Paul starts this off, he's reminding them of their identity, of who they are. He's saying, despite your fears, despite your failures, despite the sin in your life, despite that thing you said yesterday that you wish you could take back, all of that does not preclude you from what comes next, okay? Because where we start is that you are loved, that you are accepted here, that you are chosen people. Paul doesn't list names here. There's other places that Paul lists names, even people that do him dirty. He writes that down. That's in the Bible in certain places. He's not against writing names, but he avoids writing names here because he's not talking to one person. And he's not even talking to a select few, you're the holy one, so you guys get this. No, he says, all y'all. That's the Greek word, all y'all. Everybody here, you're chosen, you're a son, you're a daughter of the King. Now, of course, that means you individually are. But in the same way that I have a fingernail that is appropriately on my finger, if my fingernail fell off and was on the ground, that would not be a good sign if it just fell off, right? But thankfully, it is a part of my body. And in the same way, you and me, we all together are pieces, we are parts of the body. And so do you matter? Of course, because fingernails, I like it where it's at. That matters to me. I like my gallbladder right where it's at. That matters to me. We though, together make the body. So this is not just about me. It's not just about you. It's about us together as chosen, dearly loved people, dearly loved, holy people, which just means set apart, right? It's kind of like grandma's china. Maybe it's not really worth that much if you're going to try to sell it on eBay, but it means something to you. That painting that you don't care if it's worth a lot or if it's worth a little, it's important to you. And so it's special, it's set apart. You don't treat it the same way you treat something that you just ran off the printer, that you printed off the internet. Holy and dearly loved, that means you are holy. You are set apart, you are special to God. And it's true of you individually, but then as a community, this is what Paul's writing about. Dearly loved like a child. He reminds them, he starts off by reminding them of who they are, because we're going to get into what to do next. But what to do before who you are, that's the cart before the horse. That's where we get into like this kind of legalistic, all right, here's what I have to do in order to what? Earn God's love? You already have it, okay? And that is true for every single person here today. That's true for every single person not here today. You already have God's love that's baked into the relationship. So he's like saying, hey, it's because you already belong here that now I want to give you the next bit. So because you're holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. This is what you do when you live your life in a way that is shaped by Jesus. It's like wherever you find yourself, whether you're in a parking lot, whether you're at the Phoenix Open or at the driveway getting your mail and you run into a neighbor. Wherever you're at, you're the kind of person that when somebody encounters you, when somebody runs into you, somehow it just like made their day a little bit better. That your presence gives off something a little bit more. Because you'll notice the weird thing about compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, you cannot do those without other people around. Those require others, which is complicated, it's social in nature. So we bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. You will only know how you are being shaped when you encounter someone who really annoys you. Experiencing it right now, Jay. I hear that. You will only know what it's like to forgive when you have been wronged. You will only know how to practice kindness to someone. It's easy to be kind to people who are kind to you, right? When there's somebody who isn't. That's sadly how this works. You can't do this on your own. You can't just sit at home and just, absorb it all in. And as much as I love online stuff, and I know we have people that are homebound, Maryland, and a lot of others, that I'm glad that we have the online thing, right? This is a good thing. I'm grateful. However, and they know this too, that's not the substitute. You can't do the Christian faith on your own at home. You are in community. That's how this works. And Paul is telling us, guys, dusty people exude this kind of stuff. This is what they're like. They're shaped by God to be humble and kind and gentle and patient. All that other stuff, pride, needing to get the last word in, always being right or keeping score no matter what happens. You do this to me, I'll do that to you. Like that's not the hard, like that's easy. I don't know about you. I find it really easy to think that I live and exist at the center of the universe. Does anybody else feel like, yeah, I could get by with that? Like if I was the center of the universe, if people just made me the ruler of earth, what could go wrong, right? Like I know I could do a good job if it's not hard for me to think that everything is ultimately about me. The challenge isn't for me to make it all about me, though. The challenge is something else. You see, what we do is we see people do this, and they're really effective at this, that you can build a big following by making you and yourself and your own beliefs the center of the universe. They call it a conflict entrepreneur. Have you heard of this? It's a real thing. It's people who make a living off of stirring up fights about the dumbest stuff you will ever hear. There are, even within like the last week or two, I heard a lot of conflict entrepreneurs going off about a musical event at a sporting event. And I don't care if you liked it, I don't care if you hated it. There are conflict entrepreneurs on both sides that got millions of clicks and millions of views because everybody who is not them is a dum-dum, right? And that's how so much of the internet, frankly, works. Really, this is our society. It's by being antagonistic that you can get a lot of followers. You can grow something big. Sadly, it'll probably be a cancerous tumor that you're growing, but it can get big, okay? But you are chosen people, holy and dearly loved. And you need to clothe yourselves with compassion, which doesn't sell, kindness, which some will mistake for a lack of conviction, humility, which will go unnoticed 99% of the time, gentleness, some will mistake that for weakness, patience, because you are not the only person trying to merge, you are not the only person walking through that line, you're not the only person on earth. So we learn patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And then Paul wraps it all up. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. I love this metaphor that Paul uses of clothing because it's not something that comes natural to any of us. Clothing, nobody grows a pair of joggers or a pair of shoes on their body. I do know some men that can grow a sweater on their back, but we're gonna call that an exception and not the rule. This is not something that comes natural to us to put on clothes. So it's kind of like walking in front of the closet and asking that question, well, what do I need now? Okay, I'm going to work, this outfit. I'm going to work out. Okay, I'm going to the gym, that outfit. First date, okay, here we go. Wedding day. If you're standing in front of your closet wondering what to wear on your wedding day, you're a man. We put on the character of Christ. That's what we put on. And sometimes it's going to look like gentleness. Other times it's going to look like patience. Patience, for me, it's really itchy. It's a little tight-fitting. It's uncomfortable. I don't like that one. I like to keep that outfit in the back of the closet if I can. But kindness might not be a natural fit for you. I don't know. Each of us have strengths. Each of us have buttons that get pushed. I get that. Over all of these, though, we put on love. It's kind of like that, imagine with me, because we don't really have this happen often. It's a cold, rainy, dreary day, and you have to go out and you get dressed, and then you have that jacket that just brings the outfit together. It's a statement piece, maybe it's a piece of jewelry. It's just that thing that like makes it work. I'm ready to go. That's what love does. It takes all of these characteristics and puts it on. And that's because God is love. And because of God being love, God brings all of this together when we put on love. It sharpens it, it binds it. See, a church is a culture. That's how it works whenever you get people together. A church is a culture, and we create a culture from the moment that somebody walks, let's say, onto campus, even though our campus is not the church, we're the church, right? It's the people, not the building. When somebody walks onto campus, we immediately do create a culture for them. And that's why one of the most theologically rich things I'm convinced we can do here at Chaparral, and I hope that you experienced it today. I hope you experienced it on your first time you ever came here. I hope you experience it every time you walk onto Chaparral's campus, is that you're greeted with a smile. Some people call that hospitality. They're not wrong, but I think it's deeper than that. Because what it tells somebody is that no matter what you did this week, no matter what happened to you, no matter what happened around you, we are glad that you're here. We're glad you belong here. We believe that about every single one of you. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to grow this thing. But what we're trying to grow is not the institution. What we're trying to grow is Christ-like culture. So that when people show up, they can feel like, oh, man, like it just feels like good people, like I belong there. Great. We do that intentionally. So if you want to be one of the leading theologians at Chaparral Christian Church, sign up for the First Impressions team and go greet people on Sunday mornings. Because I really do think that that is where God's work begins. Of course, I think God's work is happening way beyond that too, but you get my point. What's it like? Well, it's like walking in and feeling like people aren't judging me for how I look, or for what I've done, or what I do drive or don't drive. Like, no, I just show up and it's a place of peace. In fact, you're going to hear a lot more about this over the coming weeks. Our serve team that helps us do all of this stuff here. It's easy to think of serving as volunteering. Yeah, sure, that's kind of it. Really, what we're trying to build is that sense of Christ-likeness. And I don't know of a better way of being Christ-like than making coffee for somebody, because I can't be Christ-like unless I've had a cup of coffee to start the day. So, help us out with that. You're going to see more about that. Jump in. You want to know how you get more of this kind of stuff in your life? It's by spending time together, and honestly, serving is an easy way of doing that. It's not just your church. It's not just my church. It's our church culture that we're trying to build here. And that means we act and behave a particular way. That means we don't let things fester. We don't let anger and bitterness into our hearts and begin to warp us and mold us and to start looking at others with a sense of skepticism and anger. No, we put that stuff down. Maybe at one point that was an outfit that was my size, bitterness and anger. But it's kind of like trying to wear something that fit you when you were 12 years old. Probably does not fit you anymore. It's going to be a little odd. A church that walks in trying to create a Christ-like culture is going to look at things like bitterness and anger. It's going to look at things like sexual immorality and envy. And it's going to say, hey, you know what? Those things might have defined us at one point, but that shirt no longer fits me. That's who I once was. That's just not who I am now. Now I'm somebody who lives in freedom. Now I'm somebody who, and you can start seeing how this works. Now you might be here and maybe right now you hear that and you say, no, actually, those clothes fit me all too well at this moment. I do struggle with sexual immorality. I do struggle with jealousy. I do struggle with anger and bitterness. Here's the deal. First, join the club. That's all of us to some extent. But God invites you into a life where you can grow out of that. And it doesn't mean that you'll never have issues the rest of your life, but it does mean that you can get to a point to where you can look back and say, wow, I can't believe I used to fit into that thing. That no longer describes you. And that's our hope and our prayer for this church, is that we grow in the kind of way that we can say, you know what describes us? Gentleness, kindness, peace, joy describes us. I think one of the reasons why people often have a hard time believing this stuff to be true in life is because they struggle to think of someone outside of like Mother Teresa or some long departed saint that embodied it well. Much less a community of people. Because I think if you've been around church world, if you've been a Christian for any period of time, you've probably gone through a moment where you say, well, that church just plain stinks. I know people that have even said that in churches that I've served. Even Chaparral people will say that. And that hurts my heart. in part because they might not be wrong. They might be right about that. And so we hold that with open hands to say, God, what could you do with what we have? How could you help us to walk in humility so that we can understand how we can grow out of certain things in becoming more like you in the process as a community of people? And this doesn't come just by you trying really hard. This isn't you doing this in private. You do not grow in forgiveness and patience on your own, sitting on your couch where you get to dial up whatever you want on your TV. You learn patience when your wife tells you that she doesn't want to watch that tonight. And then the next show, and then the next show, and then you just go to bed because you're too tired. And amen. If you aren't going to give it to me, I'm going to give it to myself there. It's where you grow in the kind of way to become the kind of person who has the worst day that you've had. And that maybe your husband, your wife, maybe your friends, your family that know you so well, they know that, oh gosh, she had such a terrible day. She's going to be a wreck when she gets home. He is going to just tear through the house the moment so they're kind of like girding up the moment you get home for you to just be that kind of an immature person who loses your mind yet again. But then you show up and you're grounded and you're present. And instead of letting those things kind of dictate how you're going to feel, how you're going to act, you're filled with a little bit more peace. And instead of biting off somebody's head, you drop some kindness in there. And all of a sudden your spouse or your friends or family is like, what's going on with you? You say, listen, I haven't figured it all out, but I'm growing. And I don't want that shirt to fit me anymore, so I got to grow out of it here. I don't want to be somebody who's described as being like that all the time. I want to be somebody who's described as constantly trying to grow out of some of these habits and these patterns. It's where you have friends and neighbors who've learned how to forgive. You're not keeping a record of rights and wrongs. Rather, you're saying, hey, it's okay. It's okay, neighbor, that you parked in front of my house for like 2 weeks straight. Okay. You want the forgiveness for yourself? You got to give it to other people too, huh? It's where you have a group of people who, when you spend time with them, they get to know you really well, but then that moment comes where you don't act like yourself, where you lose it, and they say, hey, Austin, I feel like I know you pretty well, man, and what I just heard come out of your mouth, that's just not the Austin I'm used to. What's going on? It's not just being called out, but it's where you flip it around and you have those people who, when they say that in your life, you trust them enough to listen. This comes by staying, by being curious, something that doesn't come naturally to me, I know, but you can't learn this stuff on your own. It has to happen together. That's why Paul says in Ephesians chapter 5, follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children. Do you think a parent who has dearly loved children is close to their kids or distant from their kids? Do you think kids become like their parents because they took copious notes over the decades, or because they lived with their parents? May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. That's proximity to God. When your rabbi is Jesus, we're talking about proximity. You stay, you remain attached, you abide, you live together with. And you start coughing up the dust. You start being the kind of person who looks a little bit, it's crusted in your eyebrows, and you could be credibly accused of having walked behind Jesus for quite some time. This is how our church grows. Again, I'm not talking about numbers here. This is how our church grows. It's not by getting louder or trendier, it's by getting more Christ-like. That's our growth plan. And it's getting louder or trendier. I can't think of anything less loud and trendy than a journal with Latin in it, all right? This isn't the sexy thing that churches are up to nowadays. This is an ancient thing. Ancient things don't survive without having an impact, right? So if this has been relevant for a couple thousand years, then perhaps this kind of a journey, whether you do the journal or not, whether you use an app or not, watch a video, I don't care. What I care is that you have proximity to God, and us as a church, we want to give tools for you to be able to do that. So if it's a journal, great. If it's not, that's fine too. But at the end of the day, we want you to get plugged into relationships, because it's in these places that we learn how to practice gentleness, how to practice patience and goodness. And then when people look around and they see that there's this dust-filled haboob just forming up on 64th and Shea, covering the area, they're gonna say, what is going on there? And you're not gonna be able to give them a strategy. You're not gonna give them a playbook to say, well, this, then this, then this. No. You just say, hey, come and see. Come and see what God is doing. Stick around, get close. Just walk with us in life. And what you'll find is that over time, you'll begin to see it. And it won't look like everything else. It's gonna look different, it's gonna look unique, and that's okay, that's good. That's how God works. But you'll feel it, and our hope is that one day you too might be able to be covered in the dust of your rabbi, Jesus. Let's pray. Father, we come here claiming to want to be covered in your dust, where your way is the way that our lives are done. That your will is done on earth as it is in heaven, that we walk in your footsteps, that we're covered in your dust, that we adopt Christ-like character, that we can be for the good of our families, for the good of our spouses, for the good of our neighborhoods and our people, that we can be patient and gentle and kind, that we can be people who embody your presence for the good, Lord, and that when people look at us, all they see is a bunch of dirt-covered Jesus followers. Lord, I thank you for this invitation into this kind of a life. Would you show us how to grow in that kind of a way? Whether it's a tool like a journal or an app or anything else, or a relationship that maybe we need to foster or jump into. God, outfits of sin that maybe that we've been wearing that fit us all too well, that you're asking us to take off and have a change of clothes. Lord, would you empower with your Spirit right now each and every one of us to take what you're doing in our lives and not just use that individually, but use that together in this big stew, in this big cocktail, in this body of followers. Lord, we thank you and ask your blessing on our time. It's in Jesus' name I ask it.